Blessings, the impartation of favor. Defining blessing, meanings and expressions. A blessing is fundamentally the impartation of grace, holiness, spiritual redemption, divine will, or favor. It can be an act or simply an expression conveying goodwill, frequently invoking God, gods, or a supreme being. The etymology of the verb to bless traces back to the Old English bl action or bl achson, which meant to make sacred or holy by a sacrificial custom in Anglo-Saxon paganism, often involving the use of blood in consecration rituals. The modern meaning was significantly influenced by translations of the Bible into Old English, where it was used to translate the Latin term benedicere, meaning to speak well of. This evolution led to contemporary meanings such as to praise or to wish well. A blessing can encompass three primary meanings: an act or rite of granting and receiving favor, with or without divine power, the expression of human aspiration towards goodness, and an act of praise directed towards a supreme and powerful entity. Global practices and belief systems. Blessing is recognized as one of the most common religious acts in all belief systems. It marks the beginning and end of nearly all rituals, from funeral services to daily interactions, and is often imperceptibly embedded in common speech. In Abrahamic religions, blessings are central. In Rabbinic Judaism, blessings, known as barakah, are recited at specific moments, particularly before and after partaking of food, acknowledging God as the ultimate source of all blessing. To be blessed in this context signifies being favored by God. In Christianity, blessings are integrated into prayers, hymns, and liturgies. Formal blessings are performed by bishops, priests, and deacons, often accompanied by the sign of the cross. Jesus is considered the personification of God's blessing, an inexhaustible source of divine love and generosity. The Aaronic blessing from Numbers 6:24-26, "The Lord bless you and keep you, the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you, the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace," is a famous example, described as a word of grace and a gospel blessing. In Islam, scholars believe that a fear of being misled by blessings is an attribute of the pious, and gratitude to Allah for them is crucial for success in the afterlife. Islam does not have a clerical caste, meaning no blessings are reserved for specific individuals. Hinduism places blessings at the core of puja ritual worship, where deities are invoked through mantras and offerings to receive their approval. Ashurvedi, the divinely invested substance, prasada, is then received and consumed by devotees. Indigenous and cultural traditions also feature diverse blessing practices. Shamans invoke spirits for healing, guidance, and to influence natural phenomena. In Hawaii, new constructions, like buildings or roads, are traditionally blessed in public ceremonies led by kahuna, often involving rituals such as the unwinding of a male lei. The Kijis tradition includes bata or akbata, blessing, a good wish bestowed by an elder before travel or important undertakings. Irish culture deeply embeds blessings into its fabric, reflecting both Christian and pre-Christian customs. These blessings convey wishes of peace, happiness, and protection, and are commonly used during significant life transitions such as travel, farewells, and weddings. The evolution of blessing, particularly from Old Testament emphasis on tangible, earthly well-being, for example, wealth, numerous progeny, long life, to the New Testament and later Christian traditions focusing on spiritual and internal states, for example, wisdom, peace, redemption, reveals a profound theological and cultural shift. This development indicates a move from a covenant primarily concerned with a people's physical well-being in a specific land to a more universal, internalized, and individual spiritual relationship with the divine. The blessing thus becomes less about external rewards and more about internal alignment and transformation. This reflects a broader philosophical and religious development, moving from a transactional relationship with the divine to one emphasizing grace, faith, and inner spiritual growth. Recognizing psychological and spiritual dimensions as paramount to human flourishing. Types and cultural significance. Biblical blessings are categorized into several types: material and physical, spiritual, relational, wisdom and understanding, protection and deliverance, peace and contentment, and eternal blessings. While Old Testament blessings often focused on earthly and material prosperity, the New Testament emphasizes spiritual blessings, with Jesus himself embodying God's blessing. Blessings are imparted through various methods. Verbal elements include prayers, hymns, mantras, and simply speaking well of someone. Non-verbal elements are equally significant: sacred signs, symbols, such as the swastika or the cross, images of deities or saints, believed to be empowered by consecration or relics, physical gestures, like raising an open hand or the Veridammadra, and the use of sacred music and dance. Some ancient grimoires even incorporated specific inks or animal blood to augment the power of written words. The purpose and significance of blessings are deeply rooted in human experience. They nurture hope, ward off fear, provide assurance in times of peace, and offer consolation during crises. Blessings are indispensable in celebrations, initiations, and rites of passage, forming a vital bond between supreme beings and the faithful. They also reinforce communal ties and shared beliefs, imparting courage, faith, and hope to those facing life's challenges or transitions. In literature and folklore, blessings are integral to expressive culture, reflecting linguistic heritage and religious tradition. They offer solace and celebrate life's transitions. In narrative, blessings can symbolize divine favor, resilience, and inner strength, as seen in the interpretation of God bless the child that's got his own, which speaks to self-sufficiency and emotional fortitude rather than just material wealth. The ritualistic and communal nature of blessings indicates they perform a crucial social function. They mark and validate collective experiences, providing comfort, identity, and continuity across generations. This highlights how seemingly abstract religious practices have concrete sociological functions, acting as cultural glue and providing a shared language and set of rituals for expressing goodwill, managing anxiety around change, and transmitting a collective worldview. The interwoven tapestry, invocation, curse, and blessing paradoxical relationship and shared origins. Curses and blessings, while antonyms representing good fortune or misfortune, are profoundly interconnected. Both fundamentally stem from the invocation of good or evil. When humans invoke them, both are essentially basic prayers, drawing their perceived power from a deity or supernatural force. Invocation thus serves as the shared, underlying mechanism for both phenomena. To call upon a force can lead to either positive or negative outcomes. The Bible, in particular, presents blessings and curses as a direct consequence of moral choice and obedience to divine commandments. Deuteronomy 28 explicitly outlines blessings that result from obedience and curses that arise from disobedience, framing them as two sides of the same covenantal coin. This suggests that fortune and misfortune are not random but are deeply tied to adherence to a moral or spiritual order. A significant concept is the blessing-curse paradox, which posits that experiences initially perceived as curses, such as suffering and sacrifice, can, through struggle and reflection, be transformed into profound blessings. This process often leads to personal growth and transformation. A powerful example is the Christian concept of the cross, which symbolizes both the curse of sin and brokenness, and simultaneously the blessing of healing, redemption, and divine love. This perspective suggests that the meaning and impact of events are not solely inherent but are also constructed through human perception, resilience, and response, offering a message of hope and empowerment even in seemingly hopeless situations. Divine authority, human agency, and generational impact. In many belief systems, the ultimate source of both blessings and curses is the diviner god or various gods. When a deity pronounces a blessing or a curse, it is understood as a decree, an authoritative pronouncement. When humans invoke them, these acts are seen as prayers that acknowledge divine sovereignty and power. Despite the divine source, human agency plays a critical role. Individuals are presented with the choice to pursue paths that lead to blessings or curses, as highlighted in Deuteronomy 30:19. Today I ask heaven and earth to be witnesses. I am offering you life or death, blessings or curses. Now, choose life. The power of the tongue is also emphasized, capable of releasing life or death through spoken words, as noted in Proverbs 18:21 and James 3:5-6. This creates a dynamic tension between predestination, where curses might seem like inevitable consequences, and free will, the ability to choose and transform one's experience. It implies that even within a framework of divine decree, human action plays a crucial role in shaping one's fortune or misfortune. A striking feature of both blessings and curses is their intergenerational impact. Their effects are seldom limited to the individual. Instead, they can extend to families, communities, or even entire nations, frequently continuing from generation to generation until something is done to terminate them. Biblical texts, for instance, describe punishment for unrepentant sin extending unto the third and fourth generation. This underscores a profound belief in the lasting impact of collective and individual actions, shaping the destinies of descendants. This concept transcends simple individual accountability, weaving a complex web of familial and societal destiny, and providing a framework for understanding persistent patterns of fortune or misfortune within families or communities. It also serves as a powerful motivation for righteous living, not just for oneself but for future generations, speaking to the deep human concern for legacy and the enduring influence of the past on the present. The possibility of transforming a curse into a blessing, or discovering a blessing embedded within a seemingly cursed situation, is a recurring theme across cultures. This transformation often requires significant inner strength, which can be drawn from community support and faith. modern interpretations and enduring relevance. The concepts of invocation, curse, and blessing continue to resonate powerfully in modern society due to their profound exploration of the human psyche, fate, morality, and the consequences of actions. Their prevalence in contemporary literature, film, and other media such as grimoires depicted as powerful artifacts or curses serving as pivotal plot drivers highlights their enduring narrative power and symbolic value. The interplay of these concepts speaks to universal human experiences, the quest for meaning, the navigation of suffering, the desire for protection, and the aspiration for well-being. Conclusion: Echoes of the Ancient World. This report has explored the intricate landscape of tomes, grimoires, invocations, curses, and blessings, revealing their deep historical roots, diverse cultural expressions, and enduring symbolic power. Tomes serve as the venerable repositories of knowledge, while grimoires represent a specialized, often secretive, subset dedicated to the practical application of magic. Invocations stand as the fundamental act of calling upon unseen forces, serving as the active bridge between human intention and supernatural response. This act can manifest in two seemingly opposing yet deeply intertwined outcomes: curses, which inflict misfortune, and blessings, which impart favor. The analysis underscores the profound interconnectedness and paradoxical nature of curses and blessings, often presented as two sides of a universal human experience shaped by fate, choice, and transformation. From ancient Mesopotamia to modern digital interfaces, the act of invocation reflects a consistent human tendency to seek external agency for desired outcomes. Similarly, the widespread belief in curses highlights a deep human vulnerability and a persistent quest for justice, even supernatural retribution, while also serving as a practical tool for social control. Conversely, blessings, evolving from material prosperity to spiritual transformation, function as vital mechanisms for social cohesion and the transmission of cultural values. The intergenerational impact of both curses and blessings further emphasizes a profound belief in the lasting consequences of actions and the enduring influence of the past on the present. The continued relevance of these concepts in contemporary narratives and belief systems underscores a fundamental human quest for meaning, control, and connection with forces beyond the mundane. They are not merely historical curiosities but living echoes of the ancient world, perpetually shaping our understanding of morality, destiny, and the mysterious interplay between the seen and the unseen.
The enduring landscape of supernatural engagement, charms, invocations, and divinations across cultures and eras. Executive summary: this report provides a comprehensive examination of healing charms, invocations of supernatural entities, and divination practices, highlighting their historical universality, profound cultural diversity, and persistent relevance across human societies. These practices, while distinct in their methodologies, are interconnected by a fundamental human impulse to understand, influence, and cope with the unknown aspects of existence. They are shown to be deeply intertwined with evolving religious, medical, and societal structures, often blurring the boundaries between what modern thought categorizes as magic, religion, and science. A critical analysis of these engagements also reveals significant ethical considerations, particularly concerning informed consent, potential manipulation, and the dynamics of power inherent in their application. Ultimately, the sustained presence of these practices underscores a deep-seated human quest for agency, meaning, and a structured framework for navigating uncertainty, demonstrating their adaptive capacity to fulfill these needs across varied historical and cultural contexts. Introduction: Defining the supernatural landscape. Humanity's engagement with the supernatural realm manifests in diverse yet often interconnected practices, prominently including healing charms, invocations of supernatural entities, and divination. Each of these categories represents a distinct approach to interacting with forces perceived to transcend the mundane, yet they frequently overlap in their aims and methodologies. Healing charms are ritualistic means designed to address situations of sickness and anxiety. These practices often combine specific language and actions, and in many instances, they are augmented with herbal medical prescriptions. Invocations, on the other hand, involve the act of calling upon a deity, spirit, or other supernatural power with the intention of uniting with it, thereby allowing its divine energy to manifest through the practitioner. Complementing these, divination is defined as the practice of discerning the hidden significance or underlying causes of events, and occasionally foretelling future occurrences, by employing various techniques that are understood to transcend ordinary, empirical means. These practices are not confined to specific cultures or historical periods. Their presence is universal across all civilizations, both ancient and modern. This ubiquitous presence reflects a deep-seated and enduring human need to comprehend, influence, and navigate the unpredictable dimensions of existence. The pervasive presence of charms, invocations, and divination across diverse cultures and throughout recorded history points to a fundamental and enduring human desire. This desire extends beyond mere survival. It encompasses a profound need to exert influence or gain understanding when confronted with unpredictable circumstances, such as illness, uncertainty, or the inherent mysteries of life. Humans consistently seek methods to affect outcomes or acquire hidden knowledge, which highlights a deep-seated drive for agency, i.e. the capacity to act and bring about change. These practices provide structured frameworks, however fanciful their techniques may appear, for interpreting phenomena and guiding decisions, thereby addressing existential anxieties and fostering a sense of purpose. This suggests that even as scientific understanding advances, the underlying psychological and social functions fulfilled by these practices will likely continue to find expression in new, culturally relevant forms. Furthermore, historical evidence consistently demonstrates a fluidity and intertwining of what modern Western thought rigidly categorizes as magic, religion, and medicine. Medieval charms, for instance, are explicitly described as intertwined with religion, medicine and magic, with examples like Christian blessings over herbs being widely accepted. Anglo-Saxon medical practices, as detailed in the Leech Book of Bald, were truly holistic, aiming to heal both body and spirit, and frequently treated ailments through a combination of practical and magical means. Even the early Christian Church, despite its later discouragement of magic, found it challenging to distinguish clearly between magical and religious actions. This pervasive blurring suggests that the strict disciplinary boundaries observed today are relatively recent Western constructs, emerging alongside the Enlightenment and the rise of scientific rationality. In many pre-modern and non-Western contexts, efficacy was the primary concern, and the source of healing or influence was understood holistically, without the need for rigid categorization. This indicates that a comprehensive understanding of these practices requires moving beyond anachronistic distinctions and appreciating their integrated roles within their original cultural and epistemic matrices. Healing charms. A historical and cultural overview. Healing charms represent a widespread and ancient category of supernatural engagement, manifesting in diverse forms across global cultures. Their history spans millennia, deeply embedded in human efforts to alleviate suffering and ensure well-being. Ancient origins and global forms. The use of amulets and talismans, a primary form of healing charm, has been documented for thousands of years as tools for protection and to attract good fortune. In ancient Egypt, amulets were frequently crafted from precious materials such as gold, silver, and valuable stones, reflecting a belief in their power to protect the wearer from malevolent spirits and bestow good luck. Similarly, the ancient Greeks and Romans employed amulets, often in the form of miniature figurines or coins, to guard against illness and to bring prosperity. Across continents, Native American tribes commonly created amulets using symbolic organic materials like animal teeth, bones, and feathers, intended to bring good luck and protection. The Vikings, too, fashioned amulets from materials such as bronze, iron, and gold, incorporating them into necklaces and bracelets with intricate designs and symbols believed to confer good luck, protection, and strength upon the wearer. Notable examples of historical amulets illustrate their varied forms and purposes. The Neolithic jade axe pendant, discovered in China, symbolized power, status, and protection, and was believed to facilitate safe passage to the afterlife. The Viking Mjolnir pendant, shaped like Thor's hammer, was a popular symbol of strength and protection, worn by both men and women as a talisman against evil spirits. The Egyptian scarab amulet, a beetle-shaped artifact, symbolized rebirth, regeneration, and good luck, associated with the god Khepri. Lastly, the Greek phallic amulet, crafted from various materials, served as a symbol of fertility and masculinity, believed to offer protection against the evil eye and linked to the god Dionysus. The widespread use of diverse materials, ranging from precious metals and stones to organic elements like animal bones and feathers, and even common materials like iron, in the creation of amulets and the belief in their inherent hidden power or magical potency reveals a profound understanding of materiality in these cultures. This suggests that in many cultural contexts, physical objects are not merely inert but are perceived as active conduits or vessels for immaterial, supernatural forces. The concept that mundane objects can undergo a mundane to magical fluctuation, gaining magical potential within a specific ritual assemblage, further underscores this dynamic relationship. This implies a worldview where the physical environment is not separate from the spiritual but is imbued with potential for interaction, and that human intention, combined with ritual action, can activate or direct this inherent power within objects. The choice of material often correlates with the desired effect, reflecting a sophisticated system of sympathetic correspondences. Medieval European charms and their syncretic nature. In the medieval world, charms were understood as incantations or magic spells, which could be chanted, recited, or written, frequently functioning as a type of medical recipe. Pre-modern Welsh healing charms, for instance, are described as ritual means for addressing sickness and anxiety, employing specific language and actions, sometimes complemented by herbal medical prescriptions. These charms are commonly found in Welsh manuscripts alongside medical texts, religious writings, and literary prose. The linguistic composition of Welsh charms is notable. They are predominantly in Welsh, or they appear as dual language charms in Welsh and Latin, and occasionally in English or entirely in Latin. The Welsh term for charm, swyn, is a borrowing from the Latin signum, indicating a historical linguistic and conceptual exchange. Welsh charms commonly incorporate words of power, such as divine names, e.g., Adonai, Emmanuel, divine attributes, e.g., omnipotence, words uttered by Christ, and Hebrew names of angels, e.g., Gabriel, Michael, reflecting widespread pan-European traditions. Longer charms often feature historiae, which are short narratives about Christ, saints, biblical characters, or events from religious or mythological cycles. These narratives serve to connect the sacred past with the patient's current situation, operating on the principle of similia similibus, like cures like. For example, charms to stop bleeding often reference the waters of Jordan standing still at Christ's baptism. Anglo-Saxon medical practices, as evidenced in texts like the Leech Book of Bald, adopted a holistic approach, seeking to heal both body and spirit. They treated straightforward medical problems with a combination of practical and magical means, including charms and amulets to protect against evil influences. Wounds were sometimes sung into to expedite healing, and the afflicted, or their agents, were instructed to perform specific magical rites, such as walking in a moonlit field, as part of the cure. Medieval charms, particularly those found in manuscripts like Trinity College MSO 1.13, demonstrate a clear conversion of pagan rituals into remedies approved by the Church. These charms often include Latin formulae uttered during Masses, mention Christ or saints, and conclude with signs of the cross. The strategic incorporation of Latin and Christian elements aimed to secure Christian approval and enhance the perceived healing power of the charms by drawing on established religious authority. The pervasive integration of Christian elements including Latin liturgical formulae, divine names, the sign of the cross, and biblical narrativus into pre-existing indigenous charm traditions represents more than passive cultural blending. It signifies a strategic adaptation by practitioners to legitimize their practices within the dominant religious framework of medieval Europe. The early Christian Church initially explicitly discouraged the use of magic, yet medieval theologians sometimes found it difficult to distinguish between magical and religious actions. By cloaking charms in Christian symbolism and language, practitioners could align their work with the perceived power and authority of the Church, thereby enhancing the perceived efficacy of the charm and ensuring its social acceptance and continued use. This pragmatic approach highlights how religious authority was leveraged to imbue these practices with greater potency and moral sanction, effectively blurring the lines between a blessing and a spell. This also implies that folk belief systems often prioritize what works, adapting the perceived source of power to fit the prevailing cultural and religious landscape, making these practices accessible even to the poorest who lacked formal medical assistance. The role of charms in traditional medicine and folk practices. Medical charms were frequently found integrated within collections of medical recipes, indicating that they were regarded with little or no distinction from non-magical remedies. They were presented as equally valid and proper texts for use, with their distinction lying merely in the perceived source of their curative powers. These charms addressed a wide array of ailments, including bleeding, toothaches, fevers, blurred vision, insomnia, wounds, childbirth complications, worms in the ear, and falling sickness, epilepsy. Highly skilled herbalists, often referred to as leeches, from Old English lasa meaning healer, were highly valued members of society. Many were likely monks and nuns, who benefited from access to and interpretation of leech books passed down within their learned communities. Folk magic objects, such as large striped witch stones carried for protection or animal feet used to ward off cramp, gout, or rheumatism, often relied on principles of sympathetic magic or inherent effective qualities. For example, moorhen's feet were thought to alleviate cramp due to their visual resemblance to the pain. The consistent inclusion of charms alongside herbal remedies and other practical medical advice in historical medical texts, coupled with their application to both physical symptoms and perceived spiritual or magical afflictions, reveals a deeply holistic understanding of health and disease in pre-modern societies. Illness was rarely viewed as solely a biological phenomenon. It was often attributed to evil influences, malevolent spirits, or divine displeasure. Consequently, effective healing necessitated addressing not only the physical manifestations but also the underlying spiritual or magical causes. Charms, whether spoken, written, or worn, provided a crucial means to engage with these non-physical dimensions of illness, offering a comprehensive approach to well-being that seamlessly integrated what modern thought often separates into distinct categories of medicine and magic. This indicates that charms were not merely superstitious rituals but served as a rational, culturally coherent, and often primary form of healthcare within their respective worldviews. Modern resonances and popular culture depictions in contemporary society. Traditional healing charm concepts have found new expressions and interpretations. The New Age movement, which gained prominence in the 1980s from earlier interests in human potential and holistic health, is characterized by a blend of mysticism, esoteric metaphysics, the occult, and self-actualization regimens, with a strong emphasis on healing and well-being. Tarot cards, which originated in the 15th century as a game, have evolved into a popular tool for self-reflection and divination, influenced by various occult and mystical traditions. Psychological studies further view tarot as a nuanced cultural practice involving playful creativity, nuanced cognition, healing aims, with associated risks of harm, and spiritual expression and exploration. Popular culture frequently depicts voodoo charms, often inaccurately, focusing on sensationalized aspects like black magic and hexes, despite the fact that voodoo's primary traditional use is for healing. The notable shift from traditional, often communal and religiously integrated charm practices to modern New Age healing and the widespread popularization of tools like tarot signifies a profound reinterpretation of these practices. While historical charms were often deeply embedded in a community's medical and religious life, contemporary adaptations are frequently framed within a context of individual self-actualization, personal growth and spiritual exploration. This reflects a broader societal movement away from institutional religious authority towards the authority of the self. The commercialization of practices, exemplified by the transformation of fortune-telling into a market commodity, further illustrates this trend, where sacred or ritualistic acts are repackaged as consumer services. Additionally, the misrepresentation of complex cultural practices like voodoo in popular culture demonstrates how traditional forms are often simplified, sensationalized, and even demonized for entertainment purposes, creating a significant disconnect between authentic practice and public perception. This implies that while these ancient practices persist, their meaning, function, and ethical implications are continually reshaped by the forces of modern individualism, secularization, and market demands. Invocations of supernatural entities, rituals, purposes, and entities. Invocations represent a distinct and pervasive category of human interaction with the supernatural, often contrasted with the related practice of evocation. Understanding the nuances between these two approaches is essential for appreciating the diverse motivations and methodologies involved in connecting with spiritual forces. Defining invocation and its distinction from evocation. Invocation is defined as the act of calling upon a deity, spirit, or supernatural force, typically through prayer, ritual, or spoken formula, with the purpose of seeking guidance, assistance, or the entity's presence within oneself or a sacred space. The core purpose of invocation is to temporarily embody the entity's energy and unite one's consciousness with its divine presence, focusing on awakening a transcendent aspect within oneself or the universe. This approach emphasizes awakening an inner divinity. In contrast, Evocation involves calling upon a spirit, demon, or deity to bring its presence and energy into the practitioner's space, with the practitioner typically remaining separate from the entity. The goal of evocation is often to command or negotiate with the entity to achieve specific tasks or gain knowledge. Preparations for evocation commonly include the establishment of protective circles, banishing rituals, and the use of sigils of control to contain the evoked entity. To attract entities for evocation, various offerings such as candles, flowers, incense, food drink, crow feathers, stones, sigils, or blood may be used, necessitating research into the entity's preferred offerings. The fundamental difference lies in their approach. Evocation is centered on establishing control and authority over an external force, whereas invocation is about uniting with an entity to access and manifest its energy and attributes. While both involve working with supernatural energies, evocation harnesses external power, while invocation emphasizes awakening an inner divinity. The clear conceptual and practical distinction between evocation, which emphasizes commanding an external entity, and invocation, which focuses on uniting with or embodying divine energy, reveals a sophisticated spectrum of human engagement with the supernatural. This spectrum reflects differing philosophical and theological assumptions about the nature of power, agency, and the relationship between the human and divine. Evocation implies a hierarchical dynamic where the practitioner asserts mastery over the spiritual realm, often for specific, tangible external outcomes. Invocation, conversely, suggests a more symbiotic, transformative, or even devotional relationship, where the practitioner seeks internal change, spiritual alignment, or the manifestation of divine qualities through their own being. This dichotomy highlights the diverse motivations and worldviews underpinning magical and religious practices. Some prioritize human dominance over spiritual forces, while others emphasize spiritual integration and personal evolution. This indicates that the choice between evocation and invocation is not merely a methodological preference but is deeply reflective of the practitioner's underlying spiritual philosophy, ethical stance, and desired outcome. The following table summarizes the key distinctions between evocation and invocation. Historical and cross-cultural practices. Invocation has held a central role in religious, spiritual, and magical practices across a vast array of cultures and historical periods, demonstrating its enduring significance. In ancient Mesopotamia, Sumerians, Akkadians, and Babylonians invoked their gods through hymns, prayers, and ritual offerings to secure protection, favor, and guidance. Ancient Egyptian pharaohs and priests regularly invoked deities during temple rituals, believing these acts maintained Ma'at, cosmic balance, and ensured divine favor. In ancient Greece, invocation was a vital element in both public and private worship, with poets like Homer and Hesiod famously invoking the muses for inspiration, and oracles like Delphi involving the invocation of gods such as Apollo for prophecy. The Romans, adapting many Greek religious practices, incorporated formal invocations into their rituals and legal ceremonies, highlighting the close link between religion and governance. Invocation is also integral to major global religions. In Christianity, invocations are central to numerous sacraments and liturgical ceremonies, such as the Mass, where the Holy Trinity or saints are invoked, and prayers call for the consecration of the Eucharist. In Hinduism, invocation is central to puja, ritual worship, where deities are called upon through mantras, offerings, and ritual gestures, with avahana, inviting the deity being a key step. In Islam, du'a personal invocation is an essential aspect of worship, allowing for spontaneous, personal invocations of Allah for guidance, forgiveness, and assistance. In Buddhism, invocation is commonly practiced through the chanting of mantras, prayers, and devotional recitations directed toward Buddhas, bodhisattvas, or protective deities, seeking guidance and blessings. Beyond formalized religions, invocation is central to esoteric and mystical traditions. In Hermeticism and Neoplatonism, invocation was a key practice in theurgy, where practitioners sought to ascend to higher spiritual realms by invoking divine intelligences. Medieval grimoires also detailed complex rituals for invoking angels or spirits for magical purposes. Similarly, in indigenous and shamanistic traditions, shamans frequently invoke spirit guides, animal totems, or elemental forces during healing rituals. Trance states, or vision quests. Believing these invocations facilitate communication with the spirit world for guidance and healing. The remarkable breadth of entities and forces invocata EU ranging from singular deities in monotheistic traditions, e.g., Allah, the Holy Trinity, to multiple deities in polytheistic systems, e.g., Greek gods, Hindu deities, and from specific angels and spirits to abstract forces or archetypes in esoteric traditions, demonstrates the profound adaptability of invocation as a practice. This adaptability suggests that invocation is not inherently tied to a singular ontological framework but can be seamlessly integrated into vastly different belief systems about the nature of reality and the divine. Whether the supernatural is conceptualized as an external, transcendent force, an internal aspect of consciousness, or a pervasive energy within the natural world, invocation provides a flexible mechanism for interaction. This indicates that the fundamental human desire for connection with transcendent or powerful forces is more primary than the specific conceptualization of those forces, allowing the practice to persist, evolve, and remain relevant across diverse and often contradictory worldviews. Purposes of invocation: guidance, protection, transformation, embodiment. The aims behind the practice of invocation are multifaceted, serving both practical and profound spiritual needs. Invocation is widely used to request divine intervention, protection, wisdom, or blessings in both personal and communal matters. It may also serve to consecrate a space, mark the commencement of a sacred ritual, or facilitate a deeper spiritual experience for the practitioner. In mystical or esoteric practices, invocation can function as a means of aligning oneself with a higher spiritual principle or archetype, thereby fostering personal transformation or enlightenment. A key purpose is the temporary embodiment of the entity's energy, allowing the practitioner to unite their consciousness with its divine presence. The stated purposes of invocation reveal a compelling dual focus. Practitioners seek both external benefits, such as protection, favor, and guidance, and internal states, including personal transformation or enlightenment and accessing higher self or psychic magical potential. This indicates that invocation is not solely a means of manipulating external reality or eliciting tangible outcomes, but also a profound practice for cultivating internal states, developing consciousness, and embodying desired qualities. This implies a recognition within these traditions of a reciprocal relationship between the internal and external worlds, where engaging with supernatural entities can lead to both practical assistance in daily life and profound personal development. The practice thus serves as a dynamic bridge, allowing individuals to pursue both instrumental goals and deeper spiritual evolution. Supernatural entities, types and interactions. The entities involved in invocations and evocations encompass a wide range, including spirits, demons, deities, angels, ancestors, elemental forces, or abstract principles. A paranormal glossary provides examples of entities often associated with supernatural activity, such as banshees, female spirits foretelling death, poltergeists, entities causing physical disturbances, shadow people, dark figures, wraiths, associated with death, mediums, communicating with spirits, necromancers, communicating with the dead, and spirit guides, entities providing guidance. In ancient Greek thought, the term daimons, lesser deities, was sometimes used with negative connotations for rites considered fraudulent or dangerous. The vast and varied taxonomy of supernatural entities identified across different cultural contexts, coupled with historical shifts in their perception. For example, magic evolving from a neutral force to a diabolic power and its association with demons in early Christian theology underscores that these beings are not merely objective, universally understood phenomena. Instead, they are profoundly culturally and socially constructed and categorized. The same perceived entity or phenomenon might be revered as a spirit guide in one tradition while being condemned as a demon in another. This dynamic suggests that human societies actively create and maintain taxonomies of the supernatural that reflect their specific moral frameworks, power structures, anxieties, and cosmological beliefs. The creation of a new demonology, angelology, and eschatology by the popular TV show Supernatural further illustrates how contemporary culture continues to shape, redefine, and disseminate these categories, demonstrating the ongoing fluidity and cultural embeddedness of supernatural belief systems. Contemporary manifestations and popular culture influence in modern society. Invocations and supernatural themes continue to manifest in various forms, significantly influenced by popular culture. Modern spiritual movements, such as Wicca and neo-paganism, actively incorporate invocation practices into their rituals. The popular television series Supernatural has significantly influenced contemporary understanding of demonology and angelology, creating a global panorama of world demonology and integrating nearly the entire bulk of the esoteric mythology accrued over the centuries into its narrative. Supernatural elements are widely referenced and explored across various forms of popular culture, including television shows, comics, and books. The extensive and pervasive presence of supernatural themes in popular culture serves a crucial dual function. It acts as a mirror reflecting existing societal fascinations, anxieties, and enduring questions about the unknown, but it also actively shapes, reinterprets, and disseminates these beliefs to a mass audience. While most individuals can readily distinguish fiction from reality, popular narratives possess the power to shape beliefs, as historically demonstrated by the profound influence of Dante's Inferno on the popular conception of hell. The Supernatural TV show, for example, has not merely depicted existing mythologies but has actively generated a new demonology, angelology, and eschatology, illustrating how fictional narratives can codify, elaborate, and normalize complex mythological frameworks for widespread consumption. This suggests that popular culture functions as a significant mechanism for cultural transmission, influencing not only what supernatural concepts are known but also how they are understood and perceived, making them more accessible and potentially normalizing them for broader societal engagement, even if it does not always lead to literal belief in their physical existence. Divination, methods, worldviews, and societal functions. Divination, a practice found across all civilizations, represents a fundamental human endeavor to gain access to hidden information and insights into the future. It serves as a critical mechanism for navigating uncertainty and informing decisions in both personal and collective spheres. Defining divination, seeking hidden information and future insights. Divination is defined as the practice of determining the hidden significance or cause of events, and sometimes foretelling the future, through various natural, psychological, and other techniques. It is fundamentally an effort to gain information of a mundane sort by means conceived of as transcending the mundane, meaning it seeks practical knowledge through non-ordinary means. While often conflated, divination is distinct from fortune-telling, which typically implies a less formal setting and a less prominent belief in the occult workings behind the prediction, often existing purely as an item of popular culture. The consistent portrayal of divination as seeking information upon which practical decisions can be made and its characterization as an epistemic technology underscore its instrumental and pragmatic function within human societies. It is not merely a pursuit of curiosity, but a method for acquiring factually accurate information about their world in order to inform their decisions and actions. The Zande people's routine reliance on oracular confirmation for important undertakings serves as a compelling example of this practical application. This suggests that divination, despite its fanciful or non-scientific techniques, serves a rational purpose within its cultural context, to reduce uncertainty and guide action in situations where conventional knowledge or empirical observation is insufficient. It functions as a consultative institution, providing a structured framework for individual and collective decision-making and consensus building, particularly when stakes are high or reliable information is scarce, thereby addressing the inherent human need to navigate an unpredictable and complex world. Historical development and diverse methodologies. The history of divination is complex and diverse, with its roots tracing back to ancient cultures and civilizations, where early forms were often closely tied to religious and spiritual practices as a means of communicating with divine or supernatural forces. Ancient Mesopotamians utilized hepatoscopy, the examination of animal livers, to interpret omens and predict future events. The ancient Chinese employed oracle bones, inscribed with questions and then subjected to heat, with the resulting cracks interpreted as answers. The ancient Greeks were renowned for their use of oracles, such as the Oracle of Delphi, believed to deliver prophecies directly from the gods. The Romans, in turn, adopted and adapted various divination practices, including augury, the interpretation of omens from bird flights and other natural phenomena. In contemporary mass society, divination is frequently encountered in forms such as horoscopes, astrology, crystal gazing, tarot cards, and the Ouija board. Other historical and lesser-known forms include boudoir, aromancy, cartomancy, claromancy, and various practices denoted by medieval Latin suffixes like mantia, prophecy, and scopia, observation. Specific examples include anthracomancy, by burning coals, anthropomancy, by human sacrifice, arachnomancy, by spiders, astragalomancy, by dice, and tasseography, by tea leaves or coffee grounds. The evolution of divination practices was significantly influenced by cultural exchange, such as the transmission of astrology and geomancy via the Silk Road, leading to the syncretism of different spiritual and philosophical traditions. The historical development of divination, from early, often intuitive or ad hoc practices to highly complex and formalized systems like astrology with its intricate zodiac signs, planetary associations, and interpretations, and the systematic coining of specific mancy and scopi terms in the Middle Ages, indicates a profound process of codification and systematization. This suggests that over time, human societies did not merely observe signs but actively developed intricate frameworks and rules for interpreting them, transforming what might initially have been spontaneous observations into formalized disciplines. This systematization implies a conscious effort to rationalize, control, and make more predictable the fanciful or seemingly random aspects of divination, thereby enhancing its perceived reliability, teachability, and repeatability. It also reflects a fundamental human cognitive tendency to impose order and meaning onto perceived randomness, creating coherent systems of knowledge even in the absence of empirical validation. The role of divination in decision-making and problem-solving. Divination is universally concerned with practical problems, whether private or public, and its primary aim is to seek information upon which practical decisions can be made. The inquiries posed to a diviner can range from seemingly trivial matters, such as locating a few lost coins, to significant questions of state. Beyond providing direct answers, divination can offer emotional reassurance, serve as a tool for restoring and sustaining a social structure, and function as an instrument for making decisions, building consensus, and establishing political legitimacy. Beyond its immediate utility for individual problem solving, divination plays a critical, often understated, role in fostering social cohesion and managing collective dynamics. By providing a seemingly objective, transcendent source for decisions, it can facilitate building consensus and establishing political legitimacy. The concept of ostensive detachment, or where diviners are perceived not as the authors of their pronouncements but as conduits for a higher source, is crucial here. This detachment allows for the presentation of a version of the situation that most participants are motivated to agree with, which in turn facilitates efficient coordination at a minimal cost. This implies that divination is not solely about predicting the future but also about managing social anxieties, diffusing individual responsibility for difficult choices, and fostering collective acceptance of outcomes. By attributing decisions to a non-human, authoritative source, it helps to mitigate internal conflicts and strengthen social solidarity, particularly in societies where direct human authority or consensus-building mechanisms might be fragile. Psychological and epistemological frameworks of divinatory knowledge. From a psychological perspective, divination is understood to provide insight and guidance by accessing a part of the human mind that resides in the unconscious, thereby offering greater perspective and access to psychic abilities. Psychological research, such as the investigation into tarot card divination, views it as a nuanced cultural practice involving playful creativity, nuanced cognition, healing aims, with associated risks of harm, and spiritual expression and exploration. From an epistemological standpoint, divination can be conceptualized as an epistemic technology that people utilize in an effort to obtain factually accurate information about their world. The belief in divination's efficacy can be significantly influenced by cognitive factors such as strong prior belief, underreporting of negative evidence, and misinferring belief from behavior. The field of ethnoepistemology specifically examines all human epistemological activities, including the knowledge-gathering practices of cognitive specialists such as diviners, shamans, and magicians. The inherent cognitive biases that can influence the perception of divination's effectiveness are significant. The human mind's tendency towards strong prior belief, underreporting of negative evidence, and misinferring belief from behavior can contribute to an overestimation of divination's efficacy. This means that individuals may selectively remember successful predictions, downplay or rationalize failures, and interpret ambiguous outcomes in a way that confirms their pre-existing convictions. This cognitive reinforcement mechanism helps explain the cultural omnipresence and historical persistence of divination practices, even in the absence of empirical validation by scientific standards. It highlights how the human mind actively constructs and maintains coherent belief systems, often prioritizing subjective experience and perceived utility over strict empirical verification, thereby ensuring the continued relevance of divination in various societies. Worldviews and philosophical underpinnings. The philosophical frameworks underpinning magic and divination often involve specific understandings of causality and agency. Magical worldviews frequently operate on principles such as the law of similarity, like produces like, and the law of contagion. Things which have once been in contact with each other continue to act on each other at a distance. These principles suggest that desired effects can be produced by imitating them or by manipulating objects that were once in contact with the target. This is exemplified by the use of effigies or voodoo dolls to create a link between the doll and the person, allowing actions performed on the doll to affect the individual. The concept of correspondence further posits that influence can be exerted based on a relationship or resemblance between things, often seen in folk medicine where plant properties are linked to their appearance, e.g., yellow sap for jaundice, walnuts for brain health. In these worldviews, agency is not limited to human actors. Objects and even abstract concepts can possess causal agency. This means that the will and desire of the practitioner interact with interactions with other things or phenomena to co-create agency within magical assemblages. The philosophical understanding of causality in these contexts often differs from a purely scientific, interventionist view, where causes are defined by their ability to make a difference through targeted changes. Instead, magical causality often involves a more relational and interconnected ontology, where the universe is seen as a web of sympathies and influences that can be tapped into and directed through ritual and intention. Magical causality, rooted in principles like the law of similarity and the law of contagion, provides a coherent framework for understanding agency and influence in many traditional worldviews. This framework extends agency beyond human actors, imbuing inanimate objects and abstract concepts with the capacity to exert causal power. This differs from modern scientific perspectives, which often limit causal understanding to direct, observable interventions. In magical worldviews, the act of making things happen or making a difference is achieved through symbolic actions, ritual manipulations, and the belief in hidden sympathies between elements of the cosmos. This implies a universe that is inherently responsive to human intention and ritual, where the practitioner's will, combined with specific techniques, can activate latent connections to achieve desired outcomes. This understanding of causality, while not aligning with empirical science, provides a robust and practical means for individuals and communities to conceptualize and attempt to control their environment and destiny, offering a sense of agency in the face of unpredictable forces. Ethical considerations and risks. The practice of healing charms, invocations, and divination, while serving profound human needs, also carries significant ethical considerations and potential risks, particularly concerning individual autonomy, potential exploitation, and the abuse of power. Informed consent and autonomy. A foundational ethical requirement in shamanic healing and divination is permission, signifying the express, informed consent of the client for a specific individual or group to perform such practices. Informed consent implies that the client generally understands the nature of the practice and that the practitioner works with compassionate spirits. Working without permission is deemed unethical and borders on sorcery, as every individual possesses the right and responsibility to decide matters concerning their own soul and to choose their path without interference or undue influence. This principle extends to specific scenarios, requiring parental permission for children under 12, and both teen and parental consent for most teenagers under 18. Practitioners are also typically limited to working solely with the consenting client, not their relatives or associates, and within the explicit scope of the granted permission. The Belmont Report further emphasizes that respecting persons involves treating individuals as autonomous agents capable of deliberation about personal goals and acting under such direction, while also protecting those with diminished autonomy. Manipulation, exploitation, and charlatanism. The use of certain magical practices, particularly love spells, raises significant ethical concerns due to the risk of manipulating others' free will. Spells designed to force someone to fall in love or act against their desires can have devastating consequences for both the target and the practitioner. Such practices also carry the inherent risk of backfiring or producing unintended consequences, influenced by factors like the practitioner's skill, purity of intention, and external spiritual forces. Beyond specific spells, the broader spiritual landscape is vulnerable to charlatanism and exploitation. Charlatan men of God often exploit the faith and trust of followers for personal gain, adopting charismatic personas and promising divine intervention. Their methods include false prophecies, peddling prosperity gospel in exchange for financial contributions, targeting emotionally vulnerable individuals, performing elaborate rituals, and using fear-based manipulation. The consequences for followers can be severe, including financial exploitation, emotional and psychological damage, delayed medical treatment in favor of divine healing, and an erosion of trust in legitimate religious institutions. Abuse of power in spiritual practices. Spiritual abuse is defined as the mistreatment of a person in need of help or spiritual empowerment, resulting in the weakening or undermining of that empowerment. It is a power-centered abuse occurring within a spiritual context, where an individual uses their authority to satisfy personal needs at the expense of others. This can manifest as controlling and coercive behavior, making pronouncements in the name of God, and emotional, financial, or sexual abuse. Abusive leaders often enforce conformity, viewing any lack of adherence as rebellion, and may publicly shame or slander those who question or leave. They may also deny individuals' perceptions of reality, leading to confusion and self-doubt, fostering dependency on the abuser. Abusive leaders often eliminate input from others, reduce organizational restraints on their power, and use distorted ideologies to enforce collective conformity to an unchallengeable ideology. Institutional discernment and safeguards. Religious institutions often develop frameworks for discerning alleged supernatural phenomena. The Catholic Church, for instance, outlines its discernment process in the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, a year's norms for proceeding in the discernment of alleged supernatural phenomena. These norms clarify the Vatican's role in issuing final pronouncements on reported apparitions, which do not definitively affirm supernatural origin but allow for various degrees of caution. The document highlights potential risks such as doctrinal errors, oversimplification of the gospel message, the spread of a sectarian mentality, and the misleading of believers. While the Holy Father retains exceptional authority to declare supernaturalness, typically, ecclesiastical authority does not give positive recognition of divine origin. The process involves classifications ranging from no aspects that are particularly critical or risky have been detected, nihil obstat, to declaring a phenomenon not supernatural, declaratio de non supernaturalitat. This emphasis on caution implicitly encourages focusing on ordinary means of holiness rather than solely seeking extraordinary signs. The inherent vulnerability and power dynamics in supernatural practices are a critical concern. The reliance of individuals on spiritual practitioners for healing, guidance, or connection to the divine creates an asymmetrical power relationship, where the practitioner's perceived authority can be leveraged for personal gain or control. This dynamic is exacerbated by the often subjective and unverifiable nature of supernatural phenomena, making followers susceptible to manipulation through false promises, fear-mongering, or the distortion of spiritual teachings. The ethical imperative of informed consent directly addresses this vulnerability by asserting the individual's autonomy and right to self-determination in spiritual matters. Without robust ethical frameworks and mechanisms for accountability, the potential for exploitation, i.e., whether financial, emotional, or psychological, remains a significant risk within the diverse landscape of supernatural engagement. This underscores the need for critical discernment, both by individuals and institutions, to safeguard against abuses of power and ensure that spiritual practices genuinely contribute to well-being rather than harm. The exploration of healing charms, invocations of supernatural entities, and divination practices reveals a rich and complex tapestry of human engagement with the non-material world. These practices are not isolated curiosities but universal phenomena deeply embedded in diverse cultures across millennia, reflecting a persistent human quest for agency, meaning, and coping mechanisms in the face of uncertainty. Healing charms, from ancient amulets to medieval incantations and modern New Age adaptations, consistently demonstrate a belief in the power of materiality as a conduit for immaterial forces. Their historical integration into medical and folk practices highlights a holistic understanding of health that blurred the lines between what modern thought categorizes as medicine, magic, and religion. The strategic adaptation of these charms, particularly through the incorporation of dominant religious symbols and language, underscores a pragmatic approach to enhancing perceived efficacy and ensuring societal acceptance. Invocations, distinguished from evocations by their emphasis on internal union rather than external command, showcase a spectrum of human supernatural interaction. This practice has been central to ancient civilizations, major world religions, and esoteric traditions, demonstrating its profound adaptability to vastly different ontological frameworks. The dual purpose of invocation i.e. seeking both external assistance and internal transformation i.e. points to a reciprocal relationship between inner cultivation and outer influence. The diverse array of entities invoked, from deities to spirits and abstract principles, further illustrates the culturally constructed nature of supernatural beings, which are continually shaped and disseminated by societal beliefs and popular culture. Divination, as an epistemic technology, serves a crucial function in decision-making and problem-solving, providing information transcending mundane means. Its historical evolution from intuitive practices to codified systems reflects a human tendency to impose order and predictability on the unknown. Beyond individual guidance, divination plays a vital role in social cohesion, fostering consensus and legitimacy by attributing decisions to a detached, authoritative source. However, the perceived efficacy of divination is often reinforced by cognitive biases, highlighting the interplay between belief, experience, and cultural transmission. Collectively, these practices illuminate an enduring human need to navigate an unpredictable world, to find meaning beyond the immediately observable, and to exert influence over circumstances. However, this engagement is not without its perils. The inherent power dynamics within spiritual practices necessitate rigorous ethical considerations, particularly regarding informed consent and the potential for manipulation, exploitation, and abuse of power by charlatans or authoritarian figures. Institutional discernment processes, such as those within the Catholic Church, attempt to mitigate these risks by emphasizing caution and safeguarding believers from doctrinal errors and misleading claims. In conclusion, healing charms, invocations, and divination represent dynamic and evolving facets of human experience. While their forms and interpretations may change with cultural and historical shifts, their fundamental role in addressing existential anxieties, providing frameworks for understanding, and offering a sense of agency remains a constant. Understanding these practices requires moving beyond simplistic categorizations, appreciating their intricate interplay with societal structures, and acknowledging the profound psychological and social functions they continue to fulfill.